Yo, everybody. Welcome to Off Panel, a weekly interview podcast about all things comics. I'm your host, David Harper, and this week's guest is the man behind comics like Extremity and the upcoming Murder Falcon at Image Skybound. It's Daniel Warren Johnson. Thanks for coming on, Daniel.
It's so good. Oh, yeah. Sorry about that. It's so good to be here again. Let's not edit that. I love it. I love it.
I'm going to keep in all of this intro. I love it. I just want to say really quick, I love saying the words Murder Falcon. It's just extremely excellent to say. It rolls off the tongue so well, and it's wonderful.
You know, you're not alone in that.
Yeah. It's not a pair of words I've ever expected to pair up, but it jives well together.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that because after I pitched it to Skybound, I was thinking to myself, I better like Google this to make sure nobody else has used this. And turns out that there was actually a murder in Mexico in a town called Falcon Lake.
I actually read that article because that came up when I was searching for interviews with you, and I was like, what is this? So I know all this about a murder in Mexico. It's crazy.
Yeah, so we were joking around on a panel where I had mentioned that when someone asked me about it, and Robert Kirkman leans over and he's like, well, it looks like nobody's going to be figuring out the mystery of the Falcon Lake murder because Google has now declared Murder Falcon more important than the murder on Falcon Lake.
It is funny. There is like 9 out of the 10 results are your comic, and then the 10th one is just like murder in Mexico. It's very random. Anyway, so we're going to get into a lot of things, including Mexican murders, apparently. But let's start with where you just came from. You were at San Diego Comic-Con. How was it?
Oh man, that was my first San Diego Comic-Con. So that's like a pretty good. I feel like even just that is a good explanation. My first San Diego Comic-Con, so it was a bit of a shock.
It was a lot.
Definitely, blew my hair back. Even just like walking from the hotel to the con every day was an adventure. I saw Kristen Bell get off a bus. And a swarm of people. Like I really like Kristen Bell, but like there are like at least 200 people on that street who love her way more than I do.
Yeah.
So she got swarmed. That was crazy. Just navigating through so many people. A new experience for me for sure. A little bit like New York Comic Con, but just times 10.
Well, it seemed like this year there was a lot of stuff around the con. Like I know that the Good Place was set up near the con. And I read about like a Demolition Man, like Taco Bell dinner place you could go to, which is pretty much exactly up my alley. So I mean, like those are the things I really wish I was at Comic-Con for. I was like, I'd love to go to the Good Place. I would love to find out how the 3 seashells actually work.
Have you ever been
to Comic-Con?
San Diego, yeah.
Oh, no, I have not.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's a hard con to get into in general, but the variable nature of it and the expensive nature of it is like doesn't jive well with traveling from Alaska sometimes.
I totally can get behind that. I would not have gone if I didn't need. I'm sounding like such a downer, but it's just the facts. I wouldn't have gone if I didn't feel like I had to for business-related things and comics and panels and interviews and things like that.
Yeah, no, it's understandable. I mean, it's your business and it's the biggest place to go. But I mean, I'm kind of curious. Like, do you feel like your con experiences have changed since Extremity?
Oh yeah, big time. Not so much with San Diego because I didn't actually have a booth.
Sure.
I was kind of wandering around and I had a signing every day, or maybe 1 or 2 signings, and then I was doing a lot of meetings, things like that. But when I'm at C2E2 or New York, or when I have been as Extremity has come out, I used to be able to do a ton of commissions and be pretty intense with them. Like I could really put in a lot of detail. They'd be pretty big. Felix Liu, my art rep, would just take as many commissions as people would have, and I would just keep my head down the whole show and just sketch and draw, which is great because I made a little bit of extra money. I talked to a few people here and there, but basically nobody would stop me, because nobody really knew about Space Mullet or Ghost Fleet or anything like that, and it was fine. I mean, because the people who I did talk to were really into my stuff, and it was awesome. Great positivity there. But now with Extremity, I'm having people bring me copies of Extremity and copies of Space Mullen and copies of Ghost Fleet
Mm-hmm.
and like single issue copies of Ghost Fleet, and like there'll be a stack like 3 inches high. And I'm like, oh my goodness, okay, I guess I have to sign these, which I don't mind to do. I don't mind doing it all. I love talking to people, and every single person who's come up to my table or interacted with me at a show has been nothing, short of like really positive and excited about the work that I've made.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm very thankful for it. But I've actually had to like scale down the sketches, so I only do like little 6x9 sketches at shows now, and I do sketch covers too. But I don't really draw nearly as much as I used to, just because so many people want to chat, or even if they don't have anything to sign, they just want to talk and say, I really like your commissions, or how'd you come up with Extremity, or
Mm-hmm.
things like that. Where that I hadn't. Oh man, it's crazy. It is crazy to think about like the difference even between like a year and a few months it's made just with Extremity being out.
Yeah, I mean, and that's one thing I was going to bring up to you, and is like, one of the interesting things about Extremity is it wasn't just like a book that people really liked. It wasn't like it was on a bunch of best of lists and people touted it quite a bit, but it seemed like it was a book that people connected to like really deeply in a personal level. And not because they lost hands, maybe they did lose hands, but like
Right.
they understood the idea of loss and what Theo is going through, and they could see themselves in it, and it was kind of amazing. Like, I loved reading the letters column just to see all the stuff you were hearing back from people and all like the connections they had. It was, I don't know, I mean, was that part of the Extremity experience a little bit more deep than you expected, or is that kind of what you hoped for?
Well, it's funny you mention that, because it was something that I was a little bit worried about when before Extremity came out. I was a little afraid that, since I had, and I think we actually talked about this a little bit on the podcast, the episode, the last episode with you I was on, um, where I was a little worried that since I hadn't gone through that kind of specific experience, that maybe people would see through me or think that I was being a fraud.
Mm-hmm.
And the exact opposite happened, which my wife was like yelling at me every time I brought it up, because I brought it up a lot. I was like, people are gonna think I'm so dumb, and Rachel's like, just get off your pity party here. It's ridiculous. Just people want to see honesty, and if you're being honest with yourself and the characters in the story, people are going to resonate with it.
Mm-hmm.
Just trust me on this. And then I remember I showed her. So I get the letters column emailed to me maybe a month before the issue comes out, as it's going to print. And I show Rachel all the letters that I get. And there was one, I think it was the second issue, where a young man, I believe from New York, who worked with he was a woodworker
Mm-hmm.
and played guitar. He lost like his fingers,
Oh, wow.
and like a woodworking accident. And yeah, it's crazy. I'm just like, I'm slowing down just because I'm thinking about it. The feelings that I felt even when I just read that letter,
Mm-hmm.
and I showed that to Rachel, and she let out a few tears, and she just hands the computer back to me, and she's like, "I told you so." And since then, there have been other letters that have, that have come out, and that have been published, that I've responded to, that have been amazing, of people, kind of dealing with loss in one way, either physical or emotional.
Mm-hmm.
There have been some essays written. There was an essay I read specifically in Panel X Panel,
Oh, yeah.
that PDF publication that was really moving.
Mm-hmm.
And then, not to mention the people that have come up to me at shows, and we've had real connections. I mean, we've had real amazing conversations, between like two nerds, a creator, myself, and a reader. And we're meeting on this level of something deeper than just comics, which is pretty amazing. I've had some really amazing conversations and experiences with people very much unlike myself, who have read Extremity and found something to relate to on a very, as you said, deep level. So it's something I'm really thankful for. I'm surprised by, I'm humbled by. But it's kind of like a reinforcement of what I believe to be a pretty inherent truth that my wife kind of instilled into me, is if you are honest with yourself in the story, if you put yourself into the story, whether it's kind of masked by sci-fi or monsters or what have you, there are going to be people who are going to however weird it is, there are going to be people who will connect to it, and it's kind of awesome. I mean, I don't want to go into it too much, but like I think we can all agree that like things feel pretty bad right now, at least in
Right.
the States. And I don't want to be lovey-dovey and say that it can all be fixed with stories because it can, I'm sure, but there is something heartwarming. There's something like really hopeful to me about having those experiences
Mm-hmm.
in the midst of this kind of time. And I don't know. I hope that makes sense.
No, it totally does. I mean, it's like I think that especially in times like this, people want to feel like they're not alone. And if they can see somebody else that's like a kindred spirit, like whether that, one thing I saw a lot was like I saw artists commenting on Extremity and being like they've thought about what would happen if they lost the ability to draw for one reason or another. And it's like if you can find somebody else that kind of goes through that or is thinking through that, it's meaningful. It moves people and it builds connections. And I think that's one of the amazing powers of story is like people, if you find something to share with somebody, the creator, even if they don't know them, it really engenders or like it ties you together, and that's something we need.
Yeah. And it's just as a great excuse to like come up and talk to somebody,
Yeah.
when you've like read something that it's just another way to start a conversation with someone. And I always love talking with people about Extremity. I don't think I'll ever get tired of it. And speaking of people who, actually have lost a physical part of their body, there was a young woman who drove like 10 hours from Louisiana to Charlotte to Heroes Con because she had dressed up as Thea, and she had actually had her left arm removed when she was a very young girl. And so she did a little swap. She did like the mirror image of Thea, and it was pretty amazing.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know what to say. That was really fantastic. And I actually met a woman at San Diego who was also missing an arm, who was saying that she wanted me. She said on Twitter later that someday she wants to commission me to draw Theo as the left-handed version of Thea.
Right.
But it was cool. It's. I mean, I don't presume to know at all what that experience is like, but the fact that there are people there who have resonated with it is incredible. It's just incredible.
It
It's
really
just
is.
awesome. It is.
So I did want to ask, like, when we first talked, it was right before Extremity #1 was about to come out. So it's been a bit. I know you were pretty far ahead by the time #1 came out. So you've been probably done for a bit. But like, if you can recall, like, what did you do when you actually when you finished the actual work? Because like 12 issues of writing and drawing is no joke. Like, did you celebrate? Did you sleep for a couple weeks? Or I guess you had a kid, so like that probably changed your plans quite a bit.
I mean, the main brunt of the work ended. Oh gosh, it ended right around October, like middle of October.
Mm-hmm.
I finished issue 12, and that was on a Friday. And the next day, my wife Rachel and I got on a plane and flew to Ireland for 8 days.
Oh, that is awesome.
It was amazing. Rachel was saying we have to go to Ireland. It was like going to be the next trip that we went on.
Mm-hmm.
Because Rachel loves to travel. I am more of a homebody,
Mm-hmm.
but it's something that brings her a lot of joy. So finally, we were like, okay, we're going to go to Ireland. And Rachel was, however many months pregnant, but definitely still like able to move around and walk a lot and explore. So we got on a plane the very next day. We just, it was amazing. It was fantastic. It was a great like rest recuperational time.
Yeah.
We flew into Dublin, spent like a day in Dublin. And in my opinion, the best parts of Ireland are out in the countryside.
Mm-hmm.
So we saw Glendalough. Oh my God, we saw so much. We saw so much cool stuff. We took a train out to Galway, which is my favorite part of Ireland, just on the opposite side of Ireland from Dublin,
Mm-hmm.
on the west side, and it's just very quiet. And it was a bit on like the off season a little bit, and we stayed in like little cottages. We saw a ton of castles, both like full on like still standing castles and just like broken bricks,
Mm-hmm.
like with grass growing over them. It's just everywhere you turn, there's this history there of just like, oh yeah, there were castles built,
Mm-hmm.
which we don't really have in the States. And not to mention, I had a ton of Guinness. It does taste better over there. It was a fantastic experience, and it was great for me to kind of reset as I began to think about,
Murder Falcon.
my next project. Yeah, Murder Falcon, and just kind of getting myself into the creative groove again and resetting my gears. And not to mention, it was just amazing to hang out with my wife uninterrupted for like 8 straight days.
Mm-hmm.
We actually met some really cool people there. I visited some comic shops.
Did you go to the Big Bang?
Let's see. I
In
don't
Dublin.
know if I feel like I went to maybe. Do you know? Are there like multiple Big Bangs in Dublin?
No, there's just the one. There are multiple shops in Dublin, I think. This is actually really funny. I'm going to Dublin or Ireland for 8 days next month, which is
Really?
yeah, it's very fortuitously timed. I'm gonna have
Where?
to. What's that?
What are you doing there? What you gonna do?
Going to Dublin. I'm actually going to be hosting a live podcast in Big Bang Comics in Dublin that'll have like Declan Shalvey and the owners of the shop will be on the podcast, and we're going to do it in front of a crowd and everything, which will be really fun. But
That's awesome.
Going to be going to County Clare and to County Kerry, and we're actually going to be staying in a castle because my wife both turned 40 this year, and it's our 5th wedding anniversary when we go. And so,
Congratulations.
thank you. So we're going to have like a castle time. My wife wanted to stay in this one castle that was more like the pile of bricks that you were talking about, and I told her it seemed like it was probably bad haunted, and it seemed like it'd be a bad idea for us to rent that because I don't want to be murdered by a ghost. But anyways, yeah, so we're gonna be doing a full out thing. It's gonna be wonderful. I'm excited for it. But that, I do feel like it's a good thing to have a little bit of separation between big projects like that, because it's almost like a palate cleanser in a weird way.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. That's exactly what it was.
So I was kind of curious, like, I know you've done big projects before. You've done Space Mullet, you did Ghost Fleet, you've done other things, but I'm sure you learned a lot from Extremity. Like, what were your big takeaways from it?
Probably the biggest is that, things storytelling wise, when making stories, it's not. I mean, as much as I sweat, blood and tears over how I was going to end it and storytelling beats, it did work out in the end. It took a lot of work, but when I initially started Extremity, I had an idea of the ending, but I didn't have any idea how to get there. And it's just part of the craft of, making narrative storytelling when you're on a deadline, is that you do need to kind of start with a cloudy ending in mind. There's just not enough time to get everything all planned out. So I wish that I could have gone back to my issue 1 self as I was writing it and saying, it's okay that you don't know exactly. Just plow forward. Because it was so much trepidation of how I was going to end it, and giving myself time to come up with a good solution to a storytelling problem. Because as much as drawing can be difficult on some days, it is more of a, for me at least, drinking the coffee, getting to work, finishing the page, and then being done with my workday. With writing and with creating storytelling beats, things like this, character depth, it's something that doesn't just come to me. Even if I'm sitting there, computer in front of me, I'll just have writer's block until something comes to me. This is almost every time I sit down to write.
Are you talking about like bigger ideas, or are you talking about like scripts?
And both.
Okay.
But specifically with making Extremity, there were times where I'd just sit in front of my computer and I would do that for like 3 days, 8 hours a day, just sitting at a blank screen, trying to think of it, think. It wouldn't come. And then I would take a break and draw for 2 days. I'd be in a shower the 3rd day, and it would come to me all in a second.
It's always the shower.
Shower or taking a walk, or just like casually talking about it with Rachel or another friend. Talking about it out loud really helps. But, there was so many moments like that where I was like, this is the end. My career's over. I won't be able to finish Extremity. I can't figure out how to end this. And I wish I could have said it's going to be fine. Now, that being said, I've had multiple times where I've done that with Murder Falcon, and you'd think that I'd learn or I'd remember,
right? But
I haven't really. So I can't really say that I've learned anything because I keep making those same mistakes. It's kind of like the burden of creating something from nothing.
Yeah.
It's just one of those things that's there.
At least this time you're aware of it, I guess. You like, you know, you should be doing this, but you know, it was funny. I actually I had somebody on my podcast recently, and her name's Vera Brosgol. She's a wonderful cartoonist, and she said, and I this is not an exact quote, but she was talking about phones and about how basically it's like it's impossible to create with a screen in your face. It's like create ideas wholesale like that. And it's like, it always seems like these ideas come to us in weird positions. Like I always get good ideas when I'm mowing lawns, or like
Ooh,
if I happen to like get a massage or something like that. It's always like, I need to stop this right now because I need to send myself an email with this idea.
right.
But it's like, it always happens in those weird times. And I think it's because it's like those are like few times where we actually let our minds wander, and we're always kind of engaged with stuff these days. And like, I don't know, those moments are ones where we get to separate ourselves from actively thinking about, I don't know, it's kind of like when you're trying to sleep and you can't sleep and all you think about is sleeping and you just can't do it.
Yep.
Oh, boy.
There have been multiple times though where I've come up with stuff. One time, when right before I'm about to fall asleep,
Mm-hmm.
I'll come up with an idea. I need to kind of wrestle myself awake and take some notes.
Mm-hmm.
And right when I wake up, my brain is in this like this kind of like, who cares? I'm fine. It's no big deal. Like it's in this kind, like a lot of times I find myself self-correcting my own thoughts
Mm-hmm.
or my own ideas as I'm writing. Like, oh, what if Murder Falcon did this? No, that's dumb.
It's like you're like Waldorf and Statler in your own head. You're just like
Exactly.
the Muppets who are like sassing you.
It just and you just are you're on this like basically like self like slap down, every 5 minutes. Like, no, that's stupid. No, but when you're like just woken up, the thoughts and like, what time is it? It's just your brain is in no check mode.
Yeah,
So that's another time too.
that's great. One other thing I was curious about is like, I know, from what I understand, Murder Falcon is an 8-issue miniseries.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Did the experience of doing 12 issues on Extremity make you want to go a little smaller on this one?
No, I actually. So the way that the Skybound deal works is that I get 50% instead of 100% like you do at Image,
Mm-hmm.
but Skybound fronts my I have a page rate as I kind of finish the book, kind of like if I was working on a big 2 book.
Sure.
So just by that, that math, if I do more issues, the project lasts longer.
So more pages.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I wanted to stretch, because it's just job security. I wanted to stretch Murder Falcon out as far as I could, and I was trying to push it to like 10, 12, maybe a little more even, because I thought the idea was so good.
Mm-hmm.
And what ended up happening every single time was the story kept sagging in the middle. And a lot of that was because the story is so zany and so out there and kind of fun that it can only last for so long before the fabric begins to kind of tear
Sure.
because of the strain put on it. And it doesn't make the story any less or worse. It's just you have less time to work with before the audience is like, okay.
Mm-hmm.
So, and also that too, and it's like it just like Extremity, I knew what I wanted to say, I knew how I wanted to say it, and I don't need that much time to do it. I mean, I could take more time, but at that point it would just be kind of me not wasting. How would I put it? It's just unnecessary. Like, and as much as I wish that American comics had more room for like fight scenes,
Mm-hmm.
like a manga's
Right.
fight scene might last like 20 pages. That's just not the way American comics work. So within that mindset, 8 issues was the best version of that Murder Falcon could be.
Mm-hmm.
And we're splitting it up more or less 4 and 4.
Mm-hmm.
At least that's how I'm thinking about it, kind of arc 1 and arc 2.
Yeah. No, I totally understand that, because it's like the last thing you want to do is like, like, have you watched any of the Marvel Netflix series?
Yes.
Okay, so like they're always 13 episodes, and you can always kind of tell that like sometimes they have like really like 6 or 8 episodes worth, but they stretch it out just because it's always 13. And it is
Yep.
it's funny because it's like if they just stopped doing 13, the shows would be much better. And it's like, you don't want to be that, you know, I actually enjoy the Marvel Netflix series. I've watched almost all of them. Haven't watched the newest Luke Cage one, but at the same time, it's like, even as I'm watching them, I'm like, man, this could be like 20 minutes shorter pretty easy. So you don't want to
Yep.
you don't want to go that route.
Well, and I mean, I got to be honest, like I was pretty disappointed by the Marvel, like the Netflix Punisher series,
Sure.
for the sole reason that like you could have cut that series in half and it would have been great.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Like there's like so many scenes of like Frank walking up to a house where you're like, that's not necessary. And even just like, you know, character beats that are fine, but it's like it's just there's a lot of fat hanging off the edges. And
Yeah.
I mean, I have books that I want to read. I have movies that I want to watch. Like, and like I want to feel like even if the series is shorter as a whole, if the episodes are shorter as a whole, I want to have like a concise story. Otherwise, it's just I mean, I feel like waste of my time is too strong of a word, but
Right.
that's all I can think of for right now. So that's what I'm going to do. And that's exactly how I feel about comic series, or at least that I make. I'm like, oh, if I make it this much, if I make Murder Falcon 12 issues, the story won't support it,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just going to make it a little bit bland. So
Yeah.
I want it to be 8 issues. It's going to like punch you in the face. It's going to be great. And then when it's over, you can look back on it fondly.
Yeah, exactly. Well, so let's jump into Murder Falcon. I'm going to give
Let's
a
do it.
synopsis. If I butcher this, feel free to jump in. It's the story of Jake, a bandless guitarist, or currently bandless guitarist, who finds direction in life when he meets Murder Falcon and joins Murph's quest to rid the world of evil and monsters. So he also powers Murder Falcon with his amazing shredding on the guitar, which is fantastic. When you shared it for the first time on Twitter, someone asked what your inspiration for Murder Falcon was, and you excitedly said, metal, beer, kung fu, having fun. And I thought that was fantastic. So let's get into that. Where does Murder Falcon come from? Both the name and the comic.
So my brother, he is huge into roller skating, and out in Massachusetts, kind of in the New England area, men's roller derby is very popular.
That's awesome.
It is awesome. And my brother actually made it onto the Maelstrom in Massachusetts, their B team.
Mm-hmm.
And he was trying to come up with cool names for, for like his rider name or his,
Yeah,
like,
because they
roller
always have
name.
amazing names.
Oh, they have great names. So like he's sending me texts because he's struggling trying to figure out the right name. He's like, "What do you think about Andrew Lloyd Shredder?" Things like that, like names like that. And then one of them was he sent me a list of them, like 10 at once, and one of them was Murder Falcon. And I remember I like texted him right back. I was like, "You can't be Murder Falcon because I'm taking that."
And that's how
night,
he became Andrew Lloyd Shredder.
That is literally how he became Andrew Lloyd Shredder. It was the best one out of all of them. So I went to bed that night, and I literally, just like I was saying, the ideas were just kind of coming right before I fell asleep. And I thought of the whole story right before I fell asleep. And I just knew exactly what the book was going to be about. And it's crazy to think about now, like how it came together, because it was like I didn't really know what I was going to do after Extremity. I was thinking about maybe doing some Big Two stuff,
Mm-hmm.
taking a break from like the creator-owned thing, and then this idea came to me. I'm like, well, this is what I'm doing next.
Thank you, Maelstrom.
Yes, thank you, Maelstrom. Thank you, Timmy, my brother. He also got me on Twitter way back in like early 2013, I think.
Uh-huh.
He's like, "Do you have a Twitter?" No, I don't want a Twitter. What am I going to use a Twitter for? Daniel, you need a Twitter. You need to have a Twitter. I don't want a Twitter. Just please just make a Twitter. You're going to thank me. You have art. You can share it with people. It's going to be a big deal. All right, fine, but you have to set it up for me. And he set up my Twitter.
Was he right?
He was so right.
Okay, I have to ask, because I know some of the Skybound people. What was Skybound editor-in-chief Sean Makowitz's reaction when you threw Murder Falcon out at him? Like,
Okay.
I hope you led with the name and just saw what his reaction was.
So, flash to Emerald City Comic Con 2017.
Okay.
So pretty earlier on in the year, and we were just kind of chatting, and I was like, again, I was still in the middle of working on Extremity, but things were things were rolling along fast enough that it was both in the back of our minds of what was going to be next. And so
Sure.
I kind of brought it up. I was like, so how are you feeling about, what comes after Extremity? And he's like, well, we were thinking we have some projects that need an artist, and like right away I was like, you know what, if I'm going to do another creator-owned thing, I want it to be writing and drawing again.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, okay, well, what's on your mind? And I was like, great, it's called Murder Falcon. And he threw his head back and laughed, and then I knew I had an in.
Nice.
And it was actually really funny. I'm going to totally name drop here. Ramon Villalobos and I are good friends, and he was at the show, and I was really excited about this new idea that I was going to be pitching to Skybound. And Ramon Villalobos, who else was in the room? Joe Casey, Nick, Ringside Nick. Nick.
Barber.
Nick Barber. Sorry, Nick, that I couldn't remember your last name. There are a few other guys in there. Justin Greenwood was also in the room.
Wait, really quick, was Ramon in like full out coach mode at this point?
He was not yet. This is pre-Ramon coach mode.
Okay.
He was still, he still was very, very witty, but no coach mode yet. So we're all hanging out in the hotel room. We've all had a bit to drink, and we're having a great time. Nothing crazy. We're just having a great time, just chatting and laughing. And I'm like, guys, I'm going to be pitching this new book to Skybound as my next project. And they're like, oh yeah, come on, tell us what it is. What is it? And I was like, it's called Murder Falcon. And I laid it all out for him, right? And Ramon is laughing in my face. Justin Greenwood's like, I don't know, man. I just don't know. And then Nick kept making jokes about like how I was going to get murdered by my own murder hawk. He kept getting it wrong on purpose. The whole hotel room is making fun of me. Joe Casey takes off his sunglasses and he's like, do you even want to have a career in comics? And this is like old school Joe Casey, like he's been everywhere.
Oh, I know. I interviewed Joe once, and it was one of the most intimidating things I've ever done, but he was so nice about it. Can I take a really quick interlude to tell you the story real quick?
Yeah.
This was like Emerald City, like 2011, 2012 or something.
Wow.
And I was interviewing him on camera, and this is how pro Joe Casey was. I was like nervous about it because Joe Casey, of course, wearing sunglasses inside. I was like literally moving away from him the entire time. I was like slightly stepping away from the entire time, and the cameraman just turned it as I moved, and Joe just kept following me along because I was so bad at interviewing on camera and I was so scared. Anyways, total professional, really nice guy, but intimidating. Anyways, continue.
It was intimidating because I like, I knew who he was, and I was like, well, he's gonna, hear my idea too, and he just ripped into me. They were all ripping into me, and I was so confident in this idea. Murder Falcon. It's about this guy when he gets his guitar gets transformed into the super shredder guitar. When he plays it, the better Murder Falcon fights evil. And everyone's like, you're ridiculous, you're insane, you're gonna lose everything. It's like, do you even care about money? They're all giving it to me, right? And I look at him, I shake my finger in their face. I'm like, you just wait. You just wait. You guys are gonna just you wait. You guys are gonna see. And so the next day, sure enough, I talked to Sean, pitched him Murder Falcon, and he's like, I really like this idea a lot. I really like this idea. I think this is really fun. It sounds just like the right kind of tone that we're missing in Skybound. And I was like, awesome, sounds great. He's like, I'm gonna run it up with Robert.
Yeah.
And you can work on an official pitch. And later that day, maybe Saturday of the show floor had almost closed. Who comes by my table but Robert Kirkman, the man himself, head of Skybound, and Ramon and a few of the guys were like sitting right next to me on these like Artist Alley booths, and people kind of know who Robert Kirkman looks like. He has kind of a presence about him, yeah. And so he like talks like relatively like he wasn't like hiding anything. He just like came up to my table. He's like, "Hey, heard about Murder Falcon?" And like Ramon's head just like spins, and he's like listening. And Robert's like, "I love it." And I just like turned to Ramon. I pointed at him and I was like, I told you. And Ramon, to his credit, was like, he was just completely like, it was like I dropped a mic. It was just the
Oh my
best
God.
moment ever.
That's so amazing.
And it was just probably one of the best moments of my entire life. Ramon, thank you for letting me use you in this story.
I am like, it's Extremity was very much like you. It was very you and some of your fears and beliefs, but it was more like indirect. Murder Falcon seems like it's very directly you with the character being a metal enthusiast and guitarist in that way. Is it fun to so specifically embrace something you're passionate about in this way? Like, it's because like I think that's kind of where your enthusiasm for the book is palpable, and it's probably what part of what Sean and Robert bought into is like, this just seems ridiculous, but at the same time, this is who the guy is.
It's funny because I just had lunch with Sean at San Diego, and we were laughing about it and just how ridiculous it all is. He's like, I was talking with somebody else, this guy, about it, and he's like, if anybody else had pitched us this book, we would have been like, hell no, no way are we gonna do this. It's ridiculous. He's like, but you pitched it to us, and it's just perfect. It's just like, without you, the book doesn't exist.
Yeah.
So that's cool to hear. And I do feel that way. I feel like it is like it is a big part. When you read Murder Falcon, you are getting a window into kind of my brain space, more so I think than Extremity.
Mm-hmm.
And part of that is I was thinking that I would treat Murder Falcon itself as a palate cleanser to Extremity, because I mean, I think we can all agree Extremity was like pretty intense and like it was really fun to work on, but it was also like, it's heavy. It's like got this weight to it. And Murder Falcon, I wanted to have this kind of bounce and intensity and just this immediacy of just like, this is happening because it's happening.
Yeah.
And just like, I love Miller Lite. I'm sorry, I just do. And I like playing like sweet riffs and overplaying on my guitar and having fun, and this is a big part of that. I love kung fu films, and I love Fist of the North Star. I love Wayne's World.
Mm-hmm.
It's like all these things that like make me and make me tick, and maybe it's not good to put so much of myself into a book like that, but honestly, with a title named Murder Falcon, the door has basically already been swung wide anyway. Like, at this point, even the title alone, the advantage is there, because, if anyone doesn't like it, I'd be like, hey, look, it's called Murder Falcon. What did you expect?
Yeah.
Do you even like fun? Obviously, I would never say that to a critic, but you know what I mean? It's just like that. It's just a really fun vibe that I hope is a big part of who I am, and I think you're right, man. It's so much fun and a way different experience than Extremity.
Yeah, I mean, like, I know you chatted with Oliver Sava and showed him some pages of Murder Falcon before it was even revealed. And, like, I had him on the podcast not that long ago, and we were talking about how important it is for comics to have a perspective and for it to, like, seem like it's reflective of somebody. And it's like, I think that's one of the things I love the most about your work is like everything you do, or particularly Space Mullet and Extremity and Murder Falcon, feels like an extension of you. And Murder Falcon, you can feel on the page, like there's even elements like just like the sound effects on the page feels like you kind of unleashed in a way, and like it just feels like you having a blast, and I love that.
And I feel the same way about other creators' work. Like I can tell when comic artists or creators are having fun.
Right.
Like I just finished Cosmic Ghost Rider #1. Props to Donnie and Dylan. I mean, they look like they're having an amazing time.
Mm-hmm.
And it just, you're right. It just like pops off the page. And that was the goal with Murder Falcon, is to kind of instill a sense of like, hey, come along for the ride. This is just going to be fun. I think there's also a really kind of intense emotional aspect to it as well that I think will make itself apparent in the first few issues even. But yeah, it's just like I don't know. It's hard to explain just because It's so crazy. But then maybe I don't even need to explain it because the cover and the name
Yeah.
and the design, it's all just there. Um,
Well, I think that's one
and
of the things that's coolest about the book is the fact that it's like its hook is itself, but it's like once you get into it, like you were talking about the depth a little bit, it's like there's like a shocking amount of depth in there. Even if it was just like Murder Falcon, it was just like amazing metal and like fights and stuff like that, I would have enjoyed it. But like I've read the first two issues, and I'm not going to give any spoilers, but like the emotional richness that you start like laying in there, but it's not like in your face, is so great, and it's
thank
like.
you.
Okay, this is kind of a weird comparison, but it kind of.
Okay.
Have you watched John Wick?
Yeah.
Yeah, so John Wick, you know how like they have the stuff with the wife, and it's just kind of layered in as like kind of emotional depth to this movie that's largely Keanu Reeves shooting people,
Yes.
like that like the way that they deliver that, it ties you to this character in like a way that's not so constantly overt and just makes you root for him, and for that reason we root for Jake, and I think you really accomplished that even in the first two issues.
Thanks so much. That means a lot. I wanted Murder Falcon to be fun, but at the same time, believe me, I've tried to make stories where like there isn't that much like emotional involvement,
Right.
and it's more like just like cool things that happen,
Mm-hmm.
or but if there's not a central character, if there aren't central characters making decisions, feeling things, if there's not something behind all the action and electricity and metal arms
Mm-hmm.
and bandanas, it's such a chore for me to work on, me personally.
Right.
Um, I just can't. It's like I don't get me, and I don't want to like. There are some people who like to kind of, um, as they're creating things, they like to kind of pulse a lot of the emotion out of it because
Mm-hmm.
it's, they want it to be fun and they want it to appeal to everyone, and I appreciate that. I enjoy a lot of those books, but for me as a creator, there has to be something deeper there. Otherwise, I struggle to find the reason why I'm making it.
Yeah. I mean, it kind of would be empty for you, and if it's empty for you, it'll be empty for readers. And
Yeah, exactly.
so I actually want to take a huge aside. I want to talk about music for a second, just because I have questions, naturally. You know, music's a huge part of the book, with Murder Falcon's lead, Jake, being a former member of the metal band Bruticus and an absolutely killer guitarist. Not only that, but the actual Murder Falcon's fighting abilities, as we've mentioned, are powered by Jake's guitar work. What did you listen to while you're preparing for this? I imagine it was some Racer X and Judas Priest based off of the first two issues, but like, do you have like a sound for Bruticus in your mind?
Yeah, I kind of imagined Bruticus initially to be kind of a um, late '80s kind of like instrumental shredding band,
Mm.
one that highly features a guitarist and not necessarily a vocalist. Um, a lot of musicians I'm thinking of right now are Vinnie Moore, um, oh gosh, Steve Vai,
Hmm.
a lot of like Paul Gilbert's solo work. Um, gosh, I don't know. I mean, there's a vibe about like 80s metal in particular that has kind of been colored by the glam scene and like Poison and Warrant, and I don't get me wrong, I like listening to those guys every once in a while, but what really appeals to me about heavy metal music, especially back in the mid 80s and really early 90s, was the uh, people who were uh, really taking speed and that kind of aesthetic to the next level, like Yngwie Malmsteen, um, and I say it again, Paul Gilbert.
Hmm.
These guitarists that were pushing the envelope in every way, shape, and form, which it has the really cool aesthetics, like musically that I like, that are from the '80s, like synthesizers and just a ton of delay and like a little bit of chorus, and I on the guitar effects, it just sounds fantastic and huge to me.
Hmm.
Um, and that was the initial, push to make Murder Falcon. Is I wanted to express the love that I had for this music that's provided me so much, emotional and physical healing over the past few years. Just hearing that music really would give me a boost, and in no way, shape, or form do I make a claim that music, um, fixes anything, emotional things, physical, anything like that. But I do believe it helps a tiny bit.
Mm-hmm.
It helps just a little bit, and I'll take anything I can get in those dark times. Which basically boils down to Murder Falcon being more or less a visual representation of the healing power of music. I mean, I know it's metal, and not everyone's into metal, especially the '80s stuff and the shreddy stuff. But for me, it's just been, I don't know, it's been a huge, huge. I had a lot of health problems in 2016
Mm-hmm.
as I was working on Extremity, and going through like physical therapy and all this BS is just the worst, just the
Mm-hmm.
worst. And
It's a grind.
honestly, it is a grind. Like, I mean, I'm not old, but like things pop up and you have to deal with them, and sometimes they're really unpleasant.
Mm-hmm.
And playing guitar and listening to that kind of music was just really, it was really healing for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to show that in comic book form. And Murder Falcon is kind of that outlet.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean, words don't describe how much fun it is to just rip on a guitar with some distortion on it. And if I'm ever feeling bad or depressed, or have a fight with the wife, or the baby's crying, or the baby won't sleep, or the baby is finally asleep after an hour and a half of wrestling with the sleep conundrum,
Mm-hmm.
um, if I'm ever pent up, it's like exercise for me. If I play the guitar, it doesn't fix anything, but it makes me feel just a little bit better.
Yeah. Everyone needs their outlets. I mean, honestly, like I run, and I always call it my therapy. When I go for a run, I just feel a little bit better. And I don't know. One thing I do want to say too is like in the second issue, Steve Vai gets a name drop, and I really like what the God, I forgot the name of the guy who runs the guitar shop.
Oh, his name is Nate.
Nate, yeah. So Nate has this really great line about it, about Steve Vai's work, where he's like, it's technically brilliant, but you can see the soul in it, or you can hear the soul in it. And I was like, I kind of feel like that is like almost reflective of your creative perspective. But I do want to share. I was like actually reading about this is the rabbit hole I get down when I'm researching for this stuff. I was reading about Steve Vai yesterday, and like, did you know that Steve Vai was like crazy obsessed with practice, and that he would practice 10 to 15 hours a day?
Yeah, he's pretty nuts.
That's wild. I mean,
Yeah.
but it is interesting because it's like that kind of passion is kind of similar. I'm not saying that everybody is nuts in comics, but a lot of comic artists have to work out those types of days to get their work done and everything. And it's just like you have to really love what you do to be able to do that.
Yeah, totally. Like, totally agree with that. And that line that you mentioned, one of the reasons that I brought up Steve Vai is because a lot of his, musical kind of tendencies, especially with his albums, they were a little quirkier than the kind of general shredders of the day.
Mm-hmm.
He put in a lot of more different musical styles, or if not musical styles, like different instrumentation into a lot of his albums. That a lot of shredders just weren't even touching. It was like guitar, bass, second guitar, drums, and he was like playing with a lot of different sounds that weren't just that, and also playing with kind of the time. I'm getting really nerdy about music here, but he's playing a little bit with like time signatures instead of just 4/4 shred to death.
Right.
He's like kind of switching things up, and if you ever like watch him play, I've watched many YouTube videos. I mean, he works that whammy bar like in ways that are unfathomable. Like it's great. He's just unashamedly using it, and he just doesn't. When I see him play, it just seems like he doesn't care.
Mm-hmm.
He's not worried about what people think, and I don't want to worry about what people think when I make my comics either. So I take inspiration from that in a big way.
Yeah, I mean, like that came through in like Nate's little like what he was talking about there, because it's just like it feels like there's a freedom to his approach to guitar work, and it's just like it's the same thing with that's what you. I feel like it's kind of like it very much is what we're circling around from a creative standpoint. It's just like the people who can create without like with having some freedom to it, like not like literal freedom, but like being able to do what they feel and like embrace it on the page. It's like I don't know. That's where you get to great comics, and I don't know. That's
agree.
That's a deep topic.
I totally agree, and actually have to give props to my editor Sean Macquis, because he specifically had a little note on that scene before I added that part. It was more or less Jake frustrated that he couldn't play correctly to that metronome that's ticking.
Mm-hmm.
And Sean was like, I get that shredding is about technicality, but I think it's important to, include some sort of note about musical artistry within those constraints. Because that little thing about Steve Vai wasn't in there. Um, and so Sean's note actually really helped bring out a little bit more depth into just the story,
Mm-hmm.
and explain a little bit more the emotion of like playing guitar for
Mm-hmm.
me. And like, he didn't tell me, hey, how about we talk about Steve Vai? He was just like, hey, I think we need to like add something more here. And that's when I kind of had to go through like, oh man, he's so right. And I like just started going through all of my music and like what are some artists that really speak to me in an artistic way.
Mm-hmm.
And Steve Vai was there. So thank you, Sean.
Good job by
I
you, Sean.
Yeah, what a great editor.
I want to talk about some of the details about the book. I'm not going to go too in depth because we're still a ways out until it comes out, but I do like how Murder Falcon, like, we talked about some of the emotional depth, but it even has like kind of its own mythology with the heavy and everything like that.
Yes.
Why was that something, did you have fun building something like that into the book?
You know, so much of the book, the initial like surge of inspiration was like, there's a creature called Murder Falcon. He's paired with this, magical force that transforms this guitar into this super shredder.
Right.
I don't know where he comes from. Just deal with it. And that was kind of my mentality of when I was entering the project. And Sean and Skybound were a little bit like, look, we get it, right? Like, it's called Murder Falcon. We want there to be some of that, okay, this is happening, just roll. But we also want there to be some sort of foundation. And I did have to go back and like, okay, what makes the most sense for a creature like this, a being like this to exist in the netherworlds or whatever you want to call it? And it took me a long time to come up with a good name for the place where he comes from, but I'm really happy with the
heavy. The
heavy.
heavy is so perfect. It's so good. I also want to say that I'm pretty sure that you just depicted, like when you show the heavy in the second issue, you've depicted a set from a like unused Dio video.
Yeah, dude, totally.
It looks amazing.
I think we can safely say to the listeners that there is a spread with an anvil the size of a 4-story house. So get ready.
Well, I actually thought that like some of the world building you did in the book is like really smart. Like there's this one part where Jake and his buddy Johan in the first issue are like driving down the street, and like a newspaper comes across and they're like drops some exposition on us about the monsters and everything like that, because it's like you don't explain where the monster, or like you don't explain everything about the monsters, at least in the first 2 issues, but you do inform us that this is a thing that preceded Murder Falcon coming on the scene, and I think that
Yes.
that was really clever.
I just I kind of the way that I kind of incorporated the monsters into Murder Falcon, I really didn't want it to be a kind of like BPRD vibe, when they
Sure.
find out that there are monsters in the world and it's basically the whole world versus monsters.
Mm-hmm.
I love that, but I didn't want that to be Murder Falcon. I kind of wanted the monsters almost to exist as like for lack of a better word, like they are kind of acting as the problems that we that are us as society are just kind of dealing with, but that we keep having to go like about our daily lives.
Right.
And sometimes we deal with them, sometimes they don't. Sometimes these things show up in our homes and our families, sometimes they don't. And I wanted Jake to kind of be. It was really tough to deal with because it's like if I'm too literal about everything, then nobody wants to read it.
Right.
But I also want to be saying a little something,
Mm-hmm.
at least something. And like, as I said before, like I think music helps a little bit. And I do believe that also includes like societal issues and like, I don't know. I really like the concept of I like thinking about the concept of agency,
Mm-hmm.
especially when it comes to art making and music. And I have a band that I play in with my church. I'll just say it, doesn't matter, whatever, people can deal with it. But it's really important to me, especially if it's like a church setting or even just any band, that like I'm including people to like play this music, even people who maybe aren't that great at music.
Mm-hmm.
Or everybody has their own different vibe, but everybody has like a role to play, in my opinion. And I believe that is true in this band that I've made, where it's like, okay, you can only play this one D D D D D on the piano. That's fine. You're gonna do that for this part of the song, right? And like I'm kind of like trying to orchestrate and direct so that everyone can have something to do and a role to play in this band. And I think that stretches out, in my opinion, in the way that I kind of view life. I hope I'm not getting too deep,
No,
but
no, it's great.
I do feel like I do feel like everyone has something to do that's a positive thing on this world. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. And like, I feel like in some ways, like Murder Falcon has given Jake with this guitar, like the agency to kind of fight back against these dark things in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And in turn, with Jake and with his adventures, as moving forward in the story, he's taking that agency and doing his best to instill it into others.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of where my thought process was with that, and I'm still trying to figure out in my own life and my artistic life how to give like other artists agency. I mean, it's obviously deeper than a retweet. I have interns that work with me, like from the Art Institute of Chicago here, but I'm thinking of other ways to do it too. It's always a bit of a challenge to think about that, but it's always going on in my brain.
Yeah, no, I mean that's a very very noble goal, and I don't know. I mean, like a retweet, it's not that it hurts. I mean, so like that's good, but I mean, you're looking for it, and I like that. I like that element too because it's like you can kind of see how like even in the first issue how Jake's recent decisions have affected the people around him. Like whether it's like
Yes.
the woman who's running the diner or Peggy and Nate
Yep.
and like everybody else. Like Johan is a huge part of it. It's like Johan is like a wayward man who needs his buddy back because
Yep.
like it's what ties him together and everything. It's just like it's interesting to see how like all this stuff spiderwebs and you don't really think about how you're affecting the world around it. I don't know. It's really fascinating because it's like it's such a badass book about Murder Falcon, but it's got all this like interesting depth to it. I love it. Let's get back to the badass stuff. I want to ask about the look of Murder Falcon. Why red Converse?
There is okay, have you ever seen the Kung Fu movie The Protector?
No. Oh God, who was that?
Oh man, I don't remember his name. I believe.
Why did I want to say
Well,
Jet Li? It wasn't
no,
Jet
but
Li.
it's not Jet Li. A little bit of a lesser known guy.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember what country it was made in. I'm sorry. But it is a fantastic martial arts film, and it's kung fu oriented. Basically,
It's Tony Jaa. My
yes,
wife loves that
yes.
guy. It's Thailand.
Okay,
Yeah.
Thailand. Well, if the story revolves around this guy who is basically the protector of this elephant
Mm-hmm.
until the elephant is stolen, and he goes after this elephant, because he's the protector of this elephant, and he just destroys anyone who gets in his way. And over half of the movie, he's wearing he's doing these crazy kung fu moves. He's got Converse high tops on,
Mm-hmm.
and I just thought it was the coolest thing ever. Like he's just like he's not barefoot or anything like that. He's like wearing Converse high tops. He's like kicking people in the face.
Yeah.
And I just wanted Murder Falcon to be wearing Converse. And the fact that they're red is just because it matches with his red bandana.
Yeah. And I imagine was that Rambo?
You know,
Not Rambo.
I'd always wanted to make a character with a bandana. I've been looking for an excuse to do this for a very long time. And finally, Murder Falcon arrived. It's so crazy because when I thought of the idea, I was like, I know what he looks like in my head.
Yeah.
And all the pieces, all the things, it's just like so me coming out right now, but like all the things that I wanted to draw, huge fanny pack,
Yeah.
like spiky hair, cargo pants that are like really baggy, but then taper, like mechanical stuff, like muscly feathers. And let me tell you, it was tough to figure out how to color Murder Falcon, and I gotta give props to Mike Spicer here because I spent like 3 hours one day just like because I usually do sample colors on the main characters for Mike to give him an idea, and I'm getting more and more frustrated. I had like 10 different iterations, and finally I was just like, I give up. I emailed Mike. I emailed him what I had. I was like, I hate all of these. And he came up with an awesome look for Murder Falcon, which is what you see on the page. He just got it just right.
I gotta say, Mike, he's fantastic on this book, but those like the emotional beats that I was talking about earlier, like the John Wicky ones, those ones, like the colors that he does to like really seal the emotions in there are so perfect. Like it's like I just look at the colors and I start feeling something different, and it's just so brilliant.
It's amazing.
It's
amazing.
I love the team that you have on it. And like one other thing is, it's Russ Wooten that lettered it, right?
Yeah. So there's a fun story behind that. Why when I first pitched it, I was like, and I want to letter it myself on the page, and I did my very best, and I feel like it looked pretty good, but Skybound was basically like, after like around the third issue, they're like, look, it's not bad, it's just like we want it to be more consistent, just so it's just that much more easier to read, because it was my first project that I was like hand lettering something. And so there are some elements in issue 1 and issue 2 that have been hand lettered by me.
Okay.
For instance, like the
preview pages.
Yes. So well, there's elements in the preview pages that are me. There's some that are
Russ.
There are some that are Russ. Yes, thank you. So like, but for instance, like the metal will destroy all evil. Like that's my hand lettering. So, and I've also like, I'm hand drawing the balloons on all the pages still.
Okay.
So we have that element of organicness to it as well. And also Russ is awesome. And they sent the first issue to Russ and to like kind of, because and they say like, hey Russ, give us your honest opinion on this lettering. And Russ was like, it looks awesome. Here's some few little things that I would change. And I think I could have done it, but it's like a whole new skill set that I was trying to do.
Yeah.
So it's just an example of Daniel Warren Johnson doing his best at something and not quite succeeding. And Russ comes in and saves the day. So thank you, Russ.
Well, this actually ties into something I was going to say. Like one thing I really love about the book is like how everything feels so connected. It's like the letters and the SF or the sound effects and like the art and everything feels so of one hand, and it makes sense that like some of the stuff is like hand lettered, because especially in the preview pages you can really feel it, where it's like the motion blurs and like the effect of like, I don't know, the ground being manipulated and stuff like that, with like, I don't know, it just feels like it came from the same hand. So to hear that it did makes actually a lot of sense.
Yeah, it was really important to me, especially when Russ joined on, that we keep that vibe as well. So in my opinion, I feel like we did, especially since I'm still doing the balloons, and Russ is, kind of filling in my balloons with letters, and I think it looks really good. I gotta be honest. Like, I saw the first issue colored, and lettered, and I was just, I don't know. Sometimes you just read something and you're like, dang, this really works. Like, I don't want to come off as being too confident, but like, I'm pretty confident in this story and the way this book looks. I'm so excited for people to read it.
Yeah. I do want to give Mike Spicer one more compliment, because I forgot the name of Jake's van. There's a special name for it. But it is...
Oh, the Dragon Wagon.
The Dragon Wagon, yeah. The Dragon Wagon has a really good paint job that is really, like, I don't know what it reminds me of. Like, that color scheme really reminds me of something, and I can't recall what. But it's, it's a nice-looking van.
Right?
Well, okay, so I that's the Murder Falcon section of this. I want to close with 5 questions about something that you're interested in that I'm also interested in. I did not know you were a baseball guy.
I love baseball.
I was listening to that podcast you did with Jason Hammonds, and you said that how you sometimes listen to ESPN Tonight, or ESPN's Baseball Tonight podcast, and that you're a baseball numbers guy. And I was so excited as soon as you said numbers, because I was like, oh my god, I want to listen to him talk about numbers. And then you guys didn't talk about that again, and I was really upset. So I'm like, I'm gonna have him talk about baseball. So let's ask a big overarching question. Like, what's your favorite part about baseball?
Probably the old school, old timiness refusal to like bow to the current age of like needing to have something going on at every minute.
Yeah.
It's like almost like archaic in the way that it's still presented.
Mm-hmm.
And I love it. I love it. I'm so at peace when I watch baseball. It's like
It's really relaxing.
it is really relaxing. And like I got to say, my daughter Fiona, she loves watching baseball with me. It's just the truth. I know she's only 5 months old, but dang, that girl will watch baseball for an hour and a half and be completely fine, and she'll be watching the screen the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
It's the best.
I had Ryan Brown was on the podcast. I guess not that long ago, and we talked about.
He's a big Tigers fan.
Yeah, he is, and we talked about it for a bit because I knew he was a big baseball fan. We actually talked about it beforehand. We got deep into some fantasy stuff there for a bit, but anyways, and he was saying about how he likes listening to it on the radio, and I think that's super relaxing too. Like, can you actually watch while you work?
You know, I can't.
Yeah.
Simply because. Well, I work during the day mostly, and unless it's an afternoon game, I'm not really watching it.
Sure.
But I can totally listen to a baseball game while I work. Again, it doesn't happen that often because I really don't work that much at nighttime.
Sure.
I'm much more likely to have it on while I'm noodling on the guitar or just sitting back and watching it. And you know, I have the MLB Live, the MLB TV app. Which is the best. It's the best money I've ever spent.
Yeah.
I love it. And one of my friends here in Chicago, he also plays bass. He's my buddy. He is a huge Mets fan. So if the Red Sox are playing somebody that, because I'm a huge Red Sox fan, but if the Red Sox are playing somebody that, if the game isn't like that sexy, we'll put on the Mets and, he comes over and we hang out.
Oh man, it's funny. I was going to ask you what your favorite team is, but for some, I know you are in Chicago, but I take it you're originally from Massachusetts.
That's correct. Yeah,
okay.
I grew up outside of Boston, Framingham, Massachusetts.
I bet. Oh, I know Framingham. I bet you. Man, this season's going great for you.
I know. And we finally pulled ahead of the Yankees.
Well, you'll probably stay there. Actually, the Yankees might have made a big trade while we were talking because I know they were about to trade for Zach Britton from the Orioles.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but that one, your guys' lineup is insane. Like JD Martinez,
it's crazy.
Is just stupid.
Oh, Martinez is my hero. I don't know.
I'm a Mariners fan, and I felt really terrible when they were playing you because they were up like 10-4, and the Mariners announcers no lead is safe, and I'm like, you guys just jinxed us, and I think you ended up winning 14-10, and it felt so inevitable. I was just like, this sucks. They're too good.
Seattle's not doing too bad this year either.
Yeah, we're 20 over 500. I love it. It's amazing. Best season since the last time we made the playoffs, which was 17 years ago.
That is wild.
Yeah, longest in any major sport, which is incredible.
How are you feeling about the state of the National League?
What do you mean?
Well,
the fact that the A's wouldn't make the playoffs right now in the American League, and they would have the best record in the National League.
No, if you think about basically the American League is just kicking the pants off the National League right now.
Which is weird though, because the National League actually has a better record in interleague games.
That's true.
It's so weird, but yeah, I don't know. I think part of it is there's a certain level of American League has 6 really good teams, and then there's a lot of really garbage teams. And then the National League, there aren't really any super bad teams besides the Marlins. Even the Reds are not half bad. So it's I think part of the reason why their records are worse is because there are more decent teams over there. As opposed to
oh man, so inside baseball.
Oh man, my podcast is always about inside baseball. I might as well make it actually inside baseball for a bit.
I've always thought about possibly making a baseball comic.
Oh my god, that's one thing I was gonna actually ask you about, because in Murder Falcon, some of the parts that you do, especially in the preview, there's 2 different parts where Murder Falcon first appears, and on the left side there's 4 different reaction shots, and then also the part where Jake puts on his guitar for the first time, and you kind of have zooms on him putting the strap on and things like that. That felt more manga-like in layouts to me, because most of the time in Western comics, they don't really focus on details that much. And like, I really like that, but at the same time, like, was that a kind of manga-ish influence?
Oh yeah. In fact, speaking of baseball comics, like I'm reading this comic right now called Cross Game.
Mm,
I don't know if you've read it.
I've not.
It's on Comixology. It's fantastic. Um, Not only is it artfully like wonderfully drawn, the story's great, and it doesn't really have that kind of wait what that has a tendency to happen with manga, if that makes sense.
Sure, no, that
And
totally makes
anime,
sense.
like it's just a different cultural thing where it's like sometimes like some of the way that the story goes, I'm a little confused or it's hard for me to relate to.
Mm-hmm.
Cross Game doesn't have any of that, and the baseball scenes are fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
And this artist does, I'm sorry, I don't remember his name, but the artist does focus on those details. And, you know, even like outside of the baseball scenes, there's, I posted it on Twitter a while back of, you know, just a girl who's going off to baseball camp. She gets on a bus and she gets off the bus out in the suburbs of Japan or the countryside of Tokyo or of Japan, sorry. And you barely see anything. It's just these tiny little panels cutting to like a watch on somebody's wrist, just a shot of empty bus seats, uh, a panel of a foot stepping onto a bus, and at the end a panel of a foot stepping off a bus, and then it pulls out finally to an open panel with no borders, no background, but just the girl walking away from the bus that's driving away.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so beautiful. It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's like just the right amount of information to make you feel like you're going on a trip. And I personally want to do that way more in my own work where I have room for it. And especially in the first 5 pages of Murder Falcon, like I really want to sell the timing and energy of what I'm delivering to my readers. And I feel like sometimes those little details really go a long way to helping sell the moment and just the drama of it, like the 1, 2, 3, 4
Mm-hmm.
of just. And there's another. I'm not really giving anything away here, but there's another scene later on in issue 1.
I think I'm on that page right now, by the way. I think I know what you're talking about. Go ahead.
Well, it's 1, 2, 3. It's 4 panels. A panel of like Murder Falcon throwing a bunch of punches. A panel of the monster getting. Oh, you don't see Murder Falcon's fists or anything. It's just the panel of the monster with a bunch of like action burst lines around its face,
Mm-hmm.
and then a small panel of literally nothing except a little automatopoeia which says "wish" or "sha" or something tiny, and then the huge panel of the monster just exploding. So it's like this little like 1, 2, 3, 4,
Mm-hmm.
like, and I wish that there was more of this in Western comics. Just it doesn't take that much work to really sell the impact of something like that if you just give yourself a few more pages over the course of an issue to do that. And thanks be to Skybound, because all of the pages of Murder Falcon so far are oversized. I believe issues 1 and 2 are 24 pages. Issue 3 is 26 pages, and issue 4 will be 28 pages.
Oh, wow.
So they're a little bigger than the normal 22 pager.
And that's the 4th issue is like the arc closer, right?
Correct.
So there is one page that the one I was thinking of is there's this page when Murder Falcon and Jake first meet, and like Murder Falcon needs Jake to play, and he's like freaking out, and it's like a 12 panel page, and it's it's like cross cutting between Jake's memories, and like he's very small in this one panel with like a purple background. He's saying this is crazy, and it's like that's something I've never really seen in like Western comics before. And it's just like such a nice little touch, and it's like I don't know. It's funny because like some people look at it and are like, why is this here? This is so small. But I'm like, it's because there's an impact and it changes the flow and everything. And I don't know. I mean, like this all kind of ties into. I was going to say like. One of my big things that I wish I saw more in Western comics was 2 things: sports comics and food comics, because you get that a lot, but both of those in manga, and it's like I saw those and it kind of felt right, so it connected with the baseball talk.
That's awesome. No, that's great. And for those of my readers who are listening who enjoy Extremity, fear not. There are just as many, if not more, panels than there as Extremity.
Also the artist for Cross Game is Mitsuru Adachi.
Thank you. And I believe he's the writer artist. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yep. Mm-hmm.
There you go.
So last baseball question, because I was very curious about the numbers part. Does that mean you like records? Like you're like into overarching records, or you're like a fan graphs guy or something?
You know, I feel like maybe I'm not as into numbers as you think I am.
Oh, no.
I do love numbers. Like I love being told numbers, but I don't really research it. I need it delivered to me on a silver platter. I totally respect and admire people who can do that. I'm just, I love the romance of the game more than I love the numbers of the game. I still really do love the numbers of the game, but I love them in a way that it's like, show that to me at the bottom of the screen.
Sure.
And I'll remember it for like a day. I hope you're not too disappointed.
No. It's still. I mean, that's another thing that's cool about baseball is the fact that it's like there's so many different ways to. Like, I love going to baseball games and just like hanging out in the stands and just like, I don't know. I went to a couple of Mariners games last year and they were like two of the best baseball experiences I've ever had. Actually, my bachelor party was 5 or like 7 of my friends and I met up in Seattle, and we went to a weekend series of the Mariners versus the Angels, and it was such a perfect way to spend the weekend. But I am a total huge numbers nerd. Like Ryan Brown and I totally bonded over that, I think, because like you can, that's one of the things about baseball that's interesting is you can go crazy deep with the numbers. Like
you really can.
It's like, it's probably healthier for you to not be involved with that, because like sometimes I'm like, I'm just going to read fan graphs for a good hour, and then I'm like, oh no, what happened to time?
That's like me and like guitar videos.
Oh, sure. No, it's, I think it's good for us to all have interest, but man, baseball numbers. Whew. I've invented the inspiration from that stuff, though. Like, I've invented some comic book statistics for that, and it's just like, it's so nerdy, it's ridiculous. But Daniel, that is all I have for you. Thank you so much for coming on and talking about Murder Falcon, Extremity, baseball, and everything else.
Thank you so much for having me. Thanks for giving me a chance to talk about the new project. I really appreciate you having me on for a second time. What a great, I don't know, an honor / like opportunity. It's really appreciated.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Off Panel with cartoonist Daniel Warren Johnson. You can find him on Twitter and Instagram at Daniel Warren Art, on his site at danielwarrenart.com, and his work in the upcoming Murder Falcon starting on October 10th. If you're a fan of the show, check it out on Patreon. If you back it on there, you not only support the show, but you get early access to each week's podcast, access to exclusive written and audio content, and more. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the show on iTunes or Stitcher and give the show a rating or review while you're at it. You can find it on social media as well. Like the show on Facebook at /sketched, that's SKTCHD. Follow it on Twitter at SketchComic, or follow me at @SliceFriedGold. Big thanks to all my existing patrons, including Ben Becker, Sean Pinello, Kent Heidelman, Philip Sevi, Al Ewing, Ryan Alcock, Nick Michelin, David Kelly, Robert Wilson IV, Nick Paletto, Dylan Campbell, Owen McCready, Brendan Fletcher, Michael Garland, Gary Maloney, Jonathan Nilsson, Matthew Groom, Jason Massey, Mike Gillis, Adam Bogert, Xavier Files, Maria Schweitzer, Matthew Taylor, Tyler Turner, Dan Guarino, Dan Lee, Nick Patera, Jacob Sorelli, Ford Gilmore, David Baraldi, Evan Blazer, Brian McRae, Ira James Udaskin, Henning Allers, Modern Magic Stories, Nick Hall, Bruno Batista, Abraham Reisman, Bobby Angus, Bjorn Basin, Darren Neely, John Hendrick, Steve Anderson, Phil Nall, Ian Maxfield, Cliff Chang, Benjamin Shipper, Colin McMahon, Chris Palmer, Maxwell Schmidt, Scott McGovern, Nathan Fairbairn, Kat McKenzie, Lou Iovino, Nicholas Kessler, Greg Rucka, Ryan Mail, Adam Highfield, Nicholas Gardner, Andrew Corrigan, Fiona Staples, Chris Morris, Chris O'Halloran, Mark Abnett, Mike Murphy, Michael Shirley, Tom Barnett, Jim DiMonacos, Norbert, Nick Lowe, James Kaplan, and Mission Comics and Art in San Francisco. You guys are all the best. A quick thanks to the band Wolfpack, whose excellent track outro from their album Volmilch opens and closes the show. Give them a listen as they're totally rad. Thanks for listening, and tune in next week for another episode.